Why does she keep checking her phone again and again? Not because she expects a message, but because hope lingers where logic has already left. Still, no message. No missed call. Just the silence. Maybe he's busy. Maybe he's testing her. Maybe this is just how he is. Deep down, she already knows how this story ends. She's lived it before. The disappearing act, followed by the sudden charm. He'll return just in time to make her forget how much it hurt to be ignored. She'll forgive him again. She'll feel something like love again. And then quietly, inevitably, it will all collapse. Again. She isn't naive. She isn't weak. She sees the lies. She hears the excuses. She watches him break promises like they were never spoken. And yet, she still wants him. Why? Why does her heart reach for the very thing her mind warns against? Why do so many women get addicted to the wrong men? The emotionally unavailable, the unpredictable, the ones who vanish, then reappear just long enough to keep hope alive? Why does a part of them crave what another part dreads? We're diving deep into the hidden psychology behind why so many women get addicted to the wrong men, and why it has nothing to do with weakness and everything to do with biology, trauma, and unconscious patterns. Stay with me until the end, because once you understand what's really happening beneath the surface, you'll never fall for the same illusion again. This isn't just about attraction. It's not about bad luck. It's not about being blind to red flags. It's about something deeper, something wired into the brain, a pattern as old as childhood, a thrill that feels like love but isn't. It's about addiction, not to the man, but to the emotional high and crash cycle he creates. It's about unresolved wounds disguised as romance. It's about the nervous system confusing anxiety for intensity, chaos for passion, and silence for mystery. What if the wrong man feels so right not because he completes you, but because he mirrors something broken in you? This isn't just a relationship problem. It's a psychological blueprint, a subconscious loop, a system of survival turned into self-sabotage. And unless it's understood, it repeats endlessly. Today, we're going to peel back the layers, not to judge, but to understand, not to shame, but to illuminate. Because the first step to breaking the pattern is seeing it for what it really is. The cycle is familiar, even if it's rarely spoken aloud. He texts you all night, saying things no one's ever said to you before. You feel seen, special. The world feels brighter. Then, just as suddenly, he vanishes. A day, two, maybe more. No explanation, no goodbye. Your mind spirals, your stomach knots, and your nervous system screams for resolution. And then, just when you start to detach, he returns. A voice note, a quick "miss you," a half-hearted compliment. It's not enough to heal the wound, but it's just enough to keep you hooked. This is not love. This is addiction. More specifically, it's trauma bonding, a pattern rooted in one of the brain's most powerful psychological traps: intermittent reinforcement. When validation is unpredictable, when it arrives sporadically like a slot machine payout, the brain becomes obsessed with seeking it. This is the same mechanism that keeps people gambling after countless losses. The reward might come if you just try again, and again, and again. In toxic dynamics, this pattern is weaponized, consciously or not. The abuser gives affection, then withdraws, criticizes, then compliments, disappears, then floods you with attention. Your brain can't find the pattern, so it clings harder. You start chasing not the person, but the feeling of relief, that temporary high when the silence breaks and your anxiety softens for just a moment. Your nervous system starts to equate intensity with intimacy. Chaos feels like passion, calm feels empty. And here's where it gets darker. From a young age, many women are conditioned to romanticize emotional volatility. Fairy tales, movies, and pop culture celebrate the bad boy who's dangerous, elusive, and ultimately redeemable. Emotional unpredictability becomes exciting, even desirable. Stability, by contrast, is portrayed as dull, safe, but forgettable. So when a man creates that emotional roller coaster through hot and cold texting, love bombing followed by withdrawal, or explosive arguments wrapped in apologies, it doesn't register as danger. It registers as romance. The highs feel euphoric because the lows feel unbearable, and the contrast becomes addictive. The truth is, the nervous system doesn't know the difference between fear and excitement. It only knows arousal, and in the absence of awareness, arousal is mistaken for connection. You think you're in love, but your body is chasing relief, not from loneliness, from the anxiety he keeps causing. That's not love. That's survival, disguised as desire. Attraction is not always about chemistry. Sometimes it's about memory, one we don't even know we're carrying. Long before she ever knew what romance was, a girl learns what love feels like. Not from fairy tales or movies, but from the emotional climate of her childhood. From how love was shown or withheld. From how safe she felt when she cried. From whether her needs were met with warmth or ignored. From whether affection was steady or something she had to earn. When a caregiver is emotionally unavailable, distant, unpredictable, or even cruel, the child's brain begins forming a silent equation. Love equals uncertainty. Love equals waiting. Love equals proving, pleasing, chasing. Over time, this doesn't feel abnormal. It feels familiar. And that familiarity becomes powerful. As adults, we say we're looking for something different, something healthy. But in reality, the subconscious often searches for what it already knows. Not because it's good, but because it's known. The nervous system craves familiarity, even if that familiarity once hurt us. This is why the wrong man can feel so right. Why emotionally unavailable, distant, or volatile men create a magnetic pull that's hard to explain. It isn't random, it's repetition. He reminds you, in tone, in presence, in absence, of someone else. Someone your younger self once needed to understand. Someone whose love you couldn't quite reach. The child inside you still thinks if you can finally win this man's love, then maybe you'll rewrite the past. Maybe you'll prove you were always worthy. But this is a trick of the wounded mind, a trauma loop disguised as fate. Until we understand these patterns, we repeat them. We call them our type. We romanticize the dysfunction. We feel excitement where we should feel caution. And in doing so, we reenact the very pain we swore we'd never allow again. Healing begins when you recognize that this isn't love. It's the inner child asking for a second chance at safety. And no partner can provide that until you first give it to yourself. The wrong man doesn't reflect your future. He reflects your past. The question is, are you ready to stop reliving it? There's a strange comfort in the act of fixing, in believing that if you just love someone hard enough, they'll finally become the version of themselves you imagine, that the broken parts will smooth out under your care, that your love will be the exception to their pattern. It sounds noble, even romantic, but beneath the surface and something darker is at play. Fixing is not always about compassion. Often, it's about control. In toxic relationships where emotional safety is absent, fixing becomes a coping mechanism, a way to regain power in a situation that constantly disempowers you. The logic is seductive. If I can change him, I won't have to leave. If I can save him, I don't have to lose him. The project becomes the purpose, and the pain becomes proof that it matters. But this isn't love, it's emotional codependency, a dynamic where your identity becomes entangled in someone else's healing. You lose sight of where you end and they begin. Their chaos becomes your responsibility. Their growth becomes your mission, and their pain becomes your burden to carry. Carl Jung called this the shadow, the unconscious part of ourselves we repress, deny, or disown. The traits we can't face within, we often try to fix in others. The partner you're trying to save may be less a person and more a projection, a living mirror for the unresolved parts of you. Maybe you were taught to earn love through sacrifice, to confuse caretaking with intimacy. Maybe your own pain was once ignored, so you learned to find value in being the healer, never the healed. Fixing someone else becomes a distraction from facing your own wounds. It becomes a narrative. If I can help them change, maybe I'm finally worthy of the love I never received. But the truth is this: no amount of fixing someone else will heal the parts of you that feel unworthy. You can't save someone who doesn't want to be saved, and you can't find yourself by losing yourself in their problems. Real love isn't about rescue, it's about recognition. Until you stop abandoning yourself in the name of healing others, you'll mistake self-erasure for devotion, and you'll keep calling pain love. To someone raised on emotional unpredictability, calm can feel like silence. Safety can feel like distance, and peace, the very thing they claim to want, can feel eerily close to nothingness. For those whose nervous systems have adapted to chaos, stillness doesn't register as soothing, it registers as unfamiliar. And in the absence of familiarity, the mind sounds an alarm. Something's wrong. Something is missing. This is why healthy love that is consistent, emotionally available, and rooted in respect, can feel boring. Not because it is, but because it lacks the emotional volatility that trauma-trained bodies have come to interpret as love. No explosive arguments, no sudden disappearances, no wild highs followed by brutal lows. Just presence, just steadiness. And for many, that doesn't feel like passion, it feels like emptiness. So what happens next? Often, they sabotage it. They overthink, create problems, withdraw, or convince themselves the connection just isn't deep enough. Not fiery enough, not intense enough, not real. What they're really saying is, I don't know how to feel safe in something that doesn't hurt. This is where the cycle restarts. Because emotionally dangerous partners, the ones who create tension, provoke jealousy, disappear then reappear, provide that intensity. The highs feel higher, the chemistry feels electric, and the chaos is mistaken for depth. But drama isn't depth, it's distraction, a way to avoid the discomfort of real intimacy, which isn't found in chasing someone. It's found in being seen by someone and staying. Healthy love doesn't flood your nervous system. It doesn't trigger survival mode. It doesn't feel like a wildfire. It feels like a home you've never visited before, but somehow already missed when you leave. The tragedy is, many never give that kind of love the chance to grow, because it doesn't scream, it whispers, and they've been trained to only respond to noise. Real love often feels quiet at first, not because it lacks intensity, but because it lacks fear. And for some, that's the scariest feeling of all. Culture doesn't just reflect desire, it manufactures it. From an early age, women are fed a steady diet of stories that equate love with suffering. The loner with a tortured past, the rebel who breaks rules but hides a soft heart only she can access, the emotionally damaged man whose rage masks his pain, and who, miraculously, transforms when the right woman refuses to give up on him. It's a seductive fantasy, one where pain becomes proof of depth, where emotional volatility is recast as complexity, where love isn't something safe and mutual, it's something you earn through endurance. These stories are everywhere. In movies, he's brooding, mysterious, emotionally distant, until she fixes him. In music, lyrics glorify obsession, jealousy, even emotional abuse, disguised as passion. On social media, TikTok edits turn red flags into aesthetic longing. We don't just watch these stories, we internalize them. And slowly they teach us to mistake suffering for sincerity. The damaged man becomes a romantic archetype, one that elevates dysfunction to something meaningful. He's not emotionally unavailable, he's just guarded. He doesn't lack empathy, he's just misunderstood. He's not manipulative, he's complicated. And through this lens, her pain isn't a warning, it's a rite of passage, a sign that the love is real. This isn't just fiction, it becomes a framework, one where women come to believe that love must involve sacrifice, that to be chosen, you must first be broken, that intensity is more important than safety, and that devotion is measured by how much damage you're willing to tolerate. The truth is, these cultural narratives plant seeds, and those seeds bloom into real-life heartbreak, Because when a woman grows up idolizing the man who wounds, she might unconsciously seek him out, not realizing she's acting out a script she never agreed to write. The stories we consume shape the stories we live. And until we question the narratives, we'll keep confusing toxicity with love, not because we want to, but because we were taught to. Sometimes the most painful truth is this: people don't stay in toxic relationships because they're blind to the damage. They stay because they're afraid of the emptiness that comes after. There is a kind of hunger that lives beneath it all, one that isn't loud or dramatic, but quiet and aching. A hunger for touch, for meaning, for someone to simply notice that you exist. And when that hunger runs deep, even the illusion of love can feel better than the silence of being alone. Many women don't stay with the wrong men because they believe they deserve pain. They stay because the alternative, the emotional void, feels unbearable. Loneliness doesn't always show up as silence. Sometimes it shows up as questions that echo into the night. Am I unlovable? Will no one ever choose me? Society doesn't make this easier. From a young age, women are taught that partnership is validation, that being chosen equals being enough, that life without a man means something is missing. So when she's with someone, even someone who treats her poorly, there's a sense of identity, of being wanted, of not disappearing completely. And then there's abandonment anxiety, the kind that roots itself so deeply in the nervous system that it hijacks reason. The fear of being left becomes stronger than the pain of staying. So she tolerates more, bends more, settles more, not because she lacks strength, but because she's surviving. The mind begins to rewrite the narrative. Maybe he didn't mean it. Maybe it's my fault. Maybe if I love him enough, he'll change. But beneath all of those justifications is a quiet, trembling truth. I'm afraid to be alone. This is how survival starts to look like love, how craving becomes commitment, how she convinces herself the pain is proof that it matters. Because at least it's something. At least it's not nothing. This isn't weakness. It's the human need to be seen, to be held, to belong. And until that need is acknowledged, not judged, the cycle will continue. Not because she doesn't know better, but because she's starving for something she was never taught to find within herself. There's a moment, sharp, quiet, unforgettable, when everything inside her goes still. She's standing in the same room, the same walls, the same silence, but something has changed, not in him, in her. It's not after a fight. It's not after the worst thing he's ever done. It's after the 1,000th time he didn't show up. The millionth time her heart reached out and found nothing to hold. It's after the excuses sound hollow, after the hope feels forced, after the fantasy starts to rot in her hands. This is the moment of collapse. Not dramatic, not loud, but absolute. It's when she stops waiting, when she realizes, not in theory, but in her bones, that he will not change, that the man she loved never existed in the way she imagined, that what she was loving wasn't him, but the possibility of him, the echo of potential, the idea that if she just held on a little longer, he'd finally become the version of himself she believed in. This is the death of the fantasy, and with it comes grief. Not just for the relationship, not just for him, but for the version of herself who believed it could be different, who believed love was supposed to hurt, who thought pain was a test of loyalty. She mourns the girl who kept choosing less, calling it love, and hoping it would be enough. But this collapse, this emotional devastation, is sacred, because now something else becomes possible. Not a new man, not a new story, a new perspective, one no longer rooted in addiction, projection, or fear. Awareness enters where fantasy exits, and healing begins when the illusion ends. Not all endings are failures. Some are invitations to finally begin. The most powerful decision a woman can make is not to fix a broken man, but to stop abandoning herself for him. Healing doesn't begin when the relationship ends. It begins when she realizes the war was never with him. It was with her patterns, her wiring, her beliefs about what love is supposed to feel like. Somewhere along the way, love became synonymous with struggle. And peace? Peace was mistaken for emptiness. But slowly she begins to see that the absence of pain isn't boredom, it's safety. That being calm isn't weak, it's a nervous system finally breathing. That healthy love doesn't make you prove yourself. It meets you where you are and holds you there with steady hands. The woman who walks away from the wrong man isn't bitter. She's awake. She's no longer seduced by potential or addicted to chaos. She no longer sees herself as the savior. She becomes the one she was waiting to be rescued by. This is liberation, not from him, but from the inner compulsion to lose herself in someone else. She doesn't need to be chosen anymore to feel worthy. She chooses herself again and again, not out of defiance, but from knowing who she truly is. This journey isn't about blame. It's not about shame. It's about awareness. It's about recognizing that the love she was chasing in him was always a reflection of the love she hadn't yet given herself. There's nothing romantic about self-erasure. There's nothing noble about staying in pain. True love doesn't hurt, it heals. So the next time she feels that familiar pull toward the emotionally unavailable, the unpredictable, the chaotic, she'll pause, not because she doubts her worth, but because she remembers peace is not a compromise. It's the reward and the love she thought she had to earn from someone else. The cycle doesn't end when he stops calling. It ends when you stop needing the pain to feel like love, when awareness replaces impulse and peace no longer feels like boredom. If this video made you pause, reflect, or see yourself differently, you're not alone. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Your story might be the mirror someone else needs. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because we're not done exploring the hidden patterns that shape our lives. This is just the beginning.